Okay, in this video, we are going to talk about nutrition, autotrophic and also heterotrophic nutrition. So it's quite simple. First, we define what is the meaning of nutrition. It's a process, it's a way for an organism to get nutrients and energy from the food for its life processes, referring to all the metabolical processes in the body. So it's divided into two types, autotrophic and also heterotrophic. So let's look at the term analysis. Autotroph comes from the combination of two words, auto, which means self, and also trophos, eater. As for heterotroph, heteros refers to others, and trophos, again, just now we have said that it means eater. Okay, bearing these two terms in our mind, let's look into autotrophic. Autotrophic is further divided into photoautotrophic and also chemoautotrophic. Okay, so let's look at the similarities. First, between these two types of organisms, they are able to synthesize organic compounds, both of them. The difference is that for photoautotrophics, typical examples is that those are the green plants. Okay, the green plants, which means how do green plants synthesize their own food? Is by making use of light energy. So that's why you get to see the terms photo here refers to light. So it's making use of the light energy together with carbon dioxide to synthesize organic compounds, which is glucose. Okay, and the name of the process is photosynthesis. Okay, as for chemoautotrophic, they are also synthesizing their own food, but then they are not making use of the light. Instead, by the terms chemo, it's making use of the chemicals, for example, in organic substances like hydrogen sulfide, ammonia, to synthesize organic compounds. And hence we name the process as chemosynthesis. So examples are the Nitrobacter species. Okay, so do you still remember Nitrobacter species, which we have mentioned when we talk about nitrogen cycle? Okay, next is on the heterotrophic. It is further divided into three: saprophytic, saprotrophic, because we're talking about troughs. Troughs refers to nutrition, pemakanan, and then also we have holozoic, and another one is parasitic. So for saprotrophs, they are the saprophytic organisms. Do you still remember the organisms? They are actually the decomposers, consist of the saprophytic fungi and bacteria, which gain their nutrients from dead decaying matter. So what happened? How do they eat? Is that they are secreting enzymes to the dead bodies, to the dead organic substance, and that digestion happens outside the body of these saprophytes before the nutrients are being absorbed into its body, the body of the saprophytes. Okay, so this picture here is the fungi. So I've mentioned just now the decomposers. Remember the saprophytic fungi and also bacteria. For holozoic, these organisms, they survive by eating solid organic substances, which are then digested, absorbed into the body. Okay, this one is very easy for you to remember because we are the holozoite. We ingest food and that we have digestive enzymes, and we are going to digest those complex compounds into the simplest form to be able to be absorbed into the blood, and then it's assimilated to be fully utilized. Okay, another one is parasitic. Parasites that depending on the host. So remember the parasites and the host, these two relationship is that the host in the end mostly the host is definitely going to be harmed, and they might even die from this relationship. Why? Because the parasites are absorbing all those nutrients from the host. So the examples are the fleas, tapeworms, which they get the nutrients from the human host. Okay, so these are the biotic components according to trophic levels. Okay, biotic components, recall, yeah, biotic refers to living things or organisms that um, they need energy, yeah, to carry out life processes. And how do they get this energy? Okay, if we trace back the main source of energy for all organisms actually comes from the sun. Okay, from the sun. So there are three groups in the biotic components. Earlier on we have seen it. They are the producers, pengeluar, consumers, and decomposers. Okay, so this is the definition of the trophic level, which refers to the position kedudukan organisma which can be linked by the energy flow in a food chain. Okay, so yes, this is the food chain, an example of a food chain, which usually when we give examples of food chain, the first one is we will begin with the producers, right? The producers was actually, if we are to trace back, sunlight is actually the main source of energy for all living things. Okay, why? Because producers, okay, they are the autotrophs. They are able to synthesize organic substances from inorganic substances, and they are absorbing light from sunlight, light energy to be converted into chemical energy. Um, so producers, they are the green plants. They are able to synthesize glucose from water, from carbon dioxide, and of course, definitely from um, light energy from the sun. Okay, next is that let's follow the food chain right here. After the producers, so we have an arrow pointing to the next organism, the next biotic component, and that's the primary consumer, pengguna pertama, just right after the producers. So the anak panah here, this arrow means primary consumer is consuming producers. Ataupun dalam cara kata lain, kita kata this producer ini dimakan oleh primary consumer. So who are primary consumers? They are the herbivores yang makan tumbuhan sahaja which gain energy by feeding on producers. Okay, next is secondary consumer. Okay, who are they? They are the carnivores which feed on primary consumers or omnivores which feed on primary consumers and producers. Okay, omnivore yang makan daging dan juga yang makan sayur-sayuran ataupun tumbuhan. Okay, next, after secondary consumer, okay, the next arrow is pointing to the tertiary consumer, which means this secondary consumer is being consumed by the tertiary consumer. So who are the tertiary consumers? They are the carnivores which feed on secondary consumers. Jadi inilah salah satu contoh rantai makanan. Okay, so is it. The trophic level refers to the position, kedudukan setiap satu organisme di sini yang dihubungkan dengan the energy flow which is in the food chain. Okay, not to forget also, which is not included here in the chain. You see, there's no direct linkage, but then it plays a very important role in maintaining the balance of the ecosystem, and that's the decomposers. Okay, who are they? They are the saprophytes. So microorganisms that decompose waste substances, okay, as well as the dead decaying organisms into simpler organic substances such as carbon dioxide and ammonia. They are the pengurai lah. Okay, mereka adalah pengurai, decomposers. They are also one of the biotic components, which is very important. Okay, let's look at the energy flow in the food chain. Yeah. So organisms in ecosystem, they interact with one another. Macam mana? In the form of feeding relationship, which can be shown in the food chain. This is the one just now we mentioned about trophic level, di mana dia punya hubung kait antara organisma itu dalam satu rantai makanan, which begins with the producers and ends with the secondary consumer or the tertiary consumer. So definition of the food chain: sequence of energy transfer from one trophic level to another trophic level, beginning with the producers. So organisms feed on organisms from the previous trophic level. This one, do you understand the statement? Maksudnya here in this case is that this grasshopper is feeding on the previous trophic level, and that's the producer, dan seterusnya. Therefore, what happened in this relationship is that we get to see the energy being transferred. So energy is transferred from the consumed organisms to the feeding organisms. Okay, dia bergerak, beralih. Pemindahan tenaga berlaku. So energy is transferred between trophic levels when an organism eats other organisms from which it gains its energy. And this energy is transferring. It is transferred to one organism after it has digested and assimilated the food to form new substances in the body. Okay. However, in natural conditions, most of the organisms feed on more than one type of organisms. Sebenarnya dia bukan semudah yang kita lihat dalam satu rantai makanan, ya. For example, birds eat caterpillars, okay, as well as grasshoppers and also paddies. Thus, birds form a new food chain and occupy different trophic levels. Maksudnya dalam satu okay, it depends lah, because these birds, they are not involved only in one relationship. Okay, bermaksud burung ini dalam rantai makanan yang berbeza, they might be at different trophic level. Okay, so a bird can be placed at the second trophic level as primary consumer by feeding on paddy. But the same bird can also exist at the third trophic level as secondary consumer when feeding on grasshoppers. Okay, so these are the circumstances that results in several food chain yang kita sebut sebagai beberapa rantai makanan that are interconnected. Yang akhirnya akan membentuk apa yang kita panggil sebagai siratan makanan ataupun the food web. Okay, recall, this is first trophic level, second, third, and fourth. Okay, boleh. So in a food web, it shows feeding relationship in a community. Consists of several food chains. Organisms in all food chains rely on each other. Bergantung antara satu sama lain in feeding aspects. So it always starts with the photosynthetic producers. Okay, ini yang penting. Apa yang producer buat adalah, okay, what are producers doing that other organisms cannot do, other consumers cannot do, is that producers is able to convert light energy from the sun into chemical energy. Consumer lain tidak dapat buat tugas ini. Okay, so bagaimana itu berlaku? It is in the form of food lah, that is being stored in the organs of the producers. Okay, organs like roots, fruit stems, or leaves. All right. Okay, so this is an example of food web. Okay, so from here you can identify the several food chains that are interconnected with one another. Okay, so remember, it always starts with the producers, the green plants.